Good afternoon, everyone. Can you hear me? Can you see me? Can someone please respond to me? And okay,
Yes.
thank you. Okay, right, right. We'll start. We are starting today a new topic. That is topic number 3 under this program. One of the main very important topic that we are going to discuss today. It is very important for your exam, and also if you are working in a bank, or if you have the idea, of course you have the idea to join to a bank as a banker. This is very important. Banker customer relationship. So this number 3, topic number 3, the banker customer relationship. Why I said this is important for the exam? If you go through past papers last 5 years or even last 10 years, no single exam without a question from this topic. So it is repeating. There are repeating questions from this area, and every year, at least there is a one essay type question. And some years you can see, you may find out more than one questions, maybe 2, sometimes 3 essay type questions has come from this topic, banker customer relationship. So it's very interesting topic and also very important topic, and it's the broad topic. It covers a lot of areas. However, so we'll start now the banker customer relationship. What is banker customer relationship? Under this, what we are going to discuss, what are the areas that we are going to cover. So we'll see what are the areas that we are going to cover, what are the subtopics that we are going to cover under this main topic, that is banker customer relationship. Number 1 question, topic number 1 or subtopic number 1, we are going to discuss who is a banker or what is a bank. So we are going to discuss this topic, and we are going to identify under this who is a banker, who can be considered as a banker, who can claim that he is a banker or bank. Then number 2, we are going to discuss later after that the banking business. What is banking business? That is we are going to discuss next. All right. So third one, after that we are going to discuss who is a customer. So our main topic is banker customer relationship. When we say banker customer relationship, you see there are 2 parties in this relationship. We are going to talk about a relationship, the relationship between the banker and the customer. So there are 2 parties involved in this relationship. One side there is a banker, the other side there is a customer. So now the first 2 subtopics, we are dealing with the bank and banking business. Then the third one, we are going to discuss who is a customer. Who is a customer of a bank? Who can be considered as a customer? At what point you can become a customer? Those are the things that we are going to discuss under the customer, banker customer, under the who is a customer topic, subtopic. And the 4th subtopic is the relationship between the banker and the customer. Once we identify who is a banker, once we identify who is the customer, then we are going to discuss the relationship between these 2 parties, banker and a customer. That is number 4. Number 5, under this relationship, relationship between the banker and the customer, we are going to discuss what are the rights and duties of the banker. what are the rights and duties of the banker, number 5. Then after that, number 6, we are going to discuss what are the rights and duties of a customer. That is number 6. Number 7, classification of banker-customer relationship. So we can classify the banker-customer relationship into several categories. So we'll take one by one and we'll discuss each and every category or the nature of the relationship between the banker and the customer. That is number 7. Number 8, termination of a banker-customer relationship. How can we end the banker-customer relationship? So those are the 8 topics that we are going to discuss under this main topic, banker-customer relationship. That you see now, if you thoroughly study these 8 subtopics, that covers everything. Banker-customer relationship from A to Z, it covers. I would say, when I say that A to Z, it is, as you know, this is only an introduction to the banker-customer relationship law, not a master's degree, but for your level, this will be a comprehensive study. Then if you want to master it, then you can choose one area of this banker-customer relationship, and you can read a lot of books and you can master that area later. So for the exam and for your knowledge for this program, that these are the subtopics that we are going to discuss. Okay. So the first topic that we are going to discuss under the banker-customer relationship, we are going to identify the meaning of the word banker or bank. Banker or bank. That is the first topic. Who is the banker, or what is bank? Right. What is a bank, or who is a banker? Now, when we study banker-customer relationship, is it important to identify the banker and a customer, or rather banker, both parties? We have 2 parties, no, banker on one side, the customer in the other side. Do we have to study, or do we have any doubt when we say bank or banker? Do we have a doubt? Can't we just identify the banker or the bank? Is it necessary to study it separately, go into details and discuss the law relating to banker or who is the banker? Is it necessary? It is necessary because of a reason. Now, you see, now people can claim, or even an institution or company can claim that they are a bank. They are a bank, right? Actually speaking, under the law, in accordance with the law, though they call themselves as a bank or banker, actually speaking, they are not banks. They are not banks. So the simple example I gave in classes, but this is not ideal example, but just because of the bank name is there, the word bank is there, you can't consider them as a bank under the law. So simple example I normally give is, you know, that we have an institution called blood bank, right? So when you see the name, it looks like a bank, blood bank. But though the bank word is there, you can't categorize that institution as a bank. Just a simple example I just want to give you, just to understand. Just because the name carries the word bank, that institution is not a bank. There are other requirements that has to fulfill under the law to become or to consider an institution as a bank. So that's why it is very important. So that is one point, right? So now there can be institution where they could be registered as a company, or sometimes maybe as as an association or as a society, also with the name, with the word bank in the name, still you are not a bank as per the law unless you are coming under the interpretation of bank as per the banking law. So so it is very important to decide the party who claims is a bank, whether actually that party is a bank or not. That's why that's as I explained you, it is very important point. Now, the question before us is who is a bank or who can be considered as a bank as per the law of the country. So, to answer to this question, we have to study the banking history or banking business history also a little bit. So then you will realize or you will understand the background story of this question. Now, as you know, as we studied before also, the banking business or the banking industry was introduced to the country by British people during the British colonial period. British people introduced this banking system to Sri Lanka. As you are aware, the banking system, there was no banking system, or at least there was no banking system as of today. Previously, before British comes to the country. So we had some other banks, but not financial banks like this. So the banking industry introduced by British people, but that's a new industry introduced to the country. As you are aware, and as we studied under the sources of law, by that time, Roman Dutch law was established as the common law of the country, which was introduced by Dutch people. You may remember that it became, they ruled the country, of at least the coastal areas of the country, by applying Roman Dutch law. So then that became a common law of the country, and English or British people, when they came to and when they captured the country, they didn't totally replace the Roman Dutch law, but they applied certain part of English law to the country, to the existing law of the country. So we actually have a hybrid system, or rather a mix of laws in the country. So that we studied under the sources of law. Now this banking industry was introduced to the country by British. Then this was a new industry where Roman Dutch law didn't provide provisions or didn't provide laws to cater to the requirements of the banking industry. Or in other words, in simple words, there was no provision to resolve matters arising out of banking activities, because Roman Dutch law, that part of banking, the banking law part of the Roman Dutch law was not introduced to the country. So then there was a vacuum. There was a vacuum. They had issues when they introduced the banking industry to the country. The matters arisen, but there was no, there was a lack of law where that you can solve those problems. Then what happened? The British then followed or introduced the law part, the banking law part of English banking law part to the system, Sri Lankan legal system. So automatically then with the banking industry, the banking law also introduced to the country, and it now has become a part of the Sri Lankan law. So basically, the banking law is based on English banking law. So banking matters or banking transaction, banking dispute are governed or are administered by the English banking law. Then first, as I told you, when the British people introduced the banking system to the country, you know, the banking with the banking system, one of the important point or important feature of the banking is they are maintaining current accounts, and they provide the facility to the customers to issue checks. So current account holder, they can issue checks. So the checks, when the checks are issued, then there are a lot of other matters came into, or issues came into. So therefore, the British people, they introduce a law relating to, or law govern the law of bills and checks. So the first banking related act or enactment or ordinance introduced to the country is Bills of Exchange Ordinance. That you have to remember, Bills of Exchange Ordinance number 25 of 1927. Bills of Exchange Ordinance number 25 of 1927. Number 25 of 1927 means it has been introduced in year 1927, and this is the 25th act passed by the parliament in year 1927. So then, other than that, the bank, when there is before the Banking Act enforced the country, interpreted the word bank and banking business based on two things. So when we have a Bills of Exchange Ordinance, we consider, or we consider the provisions of the Bills of Exchange Ordinance. And also, as I told you, since the English banking law is a part of, or part and parcel of Sri Lankan banking law, so we considered, or we see what has decided in the courts of England. So cases decided based on banking law also be considered in Sri Lanka when we are interpreting the word bank. So these two that you have to remember in history. Before the Banking Act came into operation, we decided, or our court decided, the question, who is the bank, based on two things, that is Bills of Exchange Ordinance and case law. As you are aware, the Banking Act came into operation in 1988. That is very, after a few decades, or rather maybe 90 years or even 100 years after introducing the banking business to the country, only the Banking Act came into operation, 1988. So banking industry was introduced somewhere in 18th century, or rather 19th century. So maybe after 100 years or 125 years only, the Banking Act came to operation. So today we have a Banking Act. So we can rely on the Banking Act because the lot of provisions are there that governs the banking activities. However, before that, when the matters arisen with regard to the banking industry or banking business or banks, that was decided based on two things, that is Bills of Exchange Ordinance and the case laws. So up to now, if you have any questions that you can ask, if you have any questions, you can disturb me and ask questions. Right.
Yeah. So I have a question.
Yes.
You said, do you need to? Can you repeat that bills of exchange ordinance, because I couldn't get through that. So when it comes to banking issues, that do we need to consider that bill of exchange ordinance also?
Okay, right. Very good question. Right, I will explain it again. Now, I said the banking business was introduced to the country by the British in say 150 years ago, right? Then say we passed the Banking Act in 1988. Maybe 125 years later, the banking business introduced to the country. Now, during this period, 125 years, we carried out banking business. But when there is a dispute arisen out of this banking transaction, before 1988, we didn't have a banking act. So we didn't have a banking act. That is number one. Number two, since the banking business was introduced to the country by the British people, during that period before 1988, when there is an issue, the court, to decide the case, they looked into two things. That is the bills of exchange ordinance. Bills of exchange ordinance is not directly deal with the banking business. It deals with the bills of exchange and checks. When we say checks are directly relates to the banking business. So therefore, bills of exchange ordinance, some provisions are applicable to the banks. So therefore, court consider the bills of exchange ordinance number 25 of 1927. Then further, the judges on that time followed the cases decided in England based on the banking law of England, because we didn't have a banking act. Today, what is the situation? Today, we have a banking act, which passed by Parliament 1988. So, if I ask, what are the laws applicable to the banking industry today? So, bills of exchange is there because it's applied, because checks are governed by bills of exchange ordinance. So, it is still valid. Number one. Number two, case law. Case law also still applicable, because as we know, our banking law is based on English banking law. So the case laws also today applicable. Number two. Number three, we have a banking act also today, number 30 of 1988. So that also applicable to the banking industry now. So three of these laws are applicable. Apart from that, there are other laws also. Today, the Parliament has time to try and pass acts. Those also applicable to the banks. So we are going to discuss later. However, mainly three laws or three parts of law applicable: bills of exchange ordinance, banking act, and case laws. Are you satisfied with the answer? Are you clear now?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Okay. Right. Thank you for the question. Right. Now, the next one we are going to discuss. We said it is very important to identify or recognize the correct party, whether that party who is claiming the bank, they are a bank, whether they actually a bank. That's an important question. That's the first question that court has to answer when the matter is referred to court under the banker-customer relationship. So this case is very important, and you have to remember this case. As I told you before, also, when I say it is an important case, it is important. So you have to write these cases in your answers. Otherwise, you won't get full marks. So this is an important case. So if you have notes that or you printouts, you may underline or highlight or whatever, because you have to remember this case. The case is the Commissioner of Inland Revenue versus Bank of Chettinad. This case is commonly known as Chettinad case, right? Commissioner of Inland Revenue versus Bank of Chettinad. Now you see this company, its name is was actually Bank of Chettinad Limited. So that was a company which carries the name, which carries the word bank in the name. So what happened in this matter? In this year 1947 or somewhere there, the Sri Lankan government, Inland Revenue Department, they announced that they are going to give a concession on income tax for the banks. So basically, the government decided to give a concession on income tax. So as you know that when a company or the bank or anyone has to pay a tax on income, so that is called income tax. So this year, the government or the Inland Revenue Department say if you are a bank, you have to pay only a lesser percentage as a income tax, because the government decided to give concession to the banks. Now this company, Bank of Chettinad Limited, they were registered as a company, and in their name the word bank was there. The actual name was Bank of Chettinad Limited, and their business, they were in the business of finance business. They were in the country, they were carrying out the country, and they got deposits from the customers. They got securities from the customers, mortgages, and they lent money to the customers, and they charge interest. So that was their business. Now, what is the business of the bank, of a bank? So banks also, they take deposit from the customers, they lend money to the customers, they get securities from the customers, and also they charge interest from the customers. So when you compare the business of a bank and the business of Chettinad Limited, they are the same. Both are doing the same business. So what happened in this case? Chettinad Limited also applied for the tax concession. So they said we are also doing banking business. We are a bank, so we are entitled for the tax concession. So, however, the Inland Revenue Department rejected their application for the tax concession on the basis that they said, the Inland Revenue Department said, Chettinad Limited is not a bank, you are only a finance company. So finance companies are not eligible for the concession. You have to pay full income tax. So therefore, they rejected the application of Chettinad Limited. Then against that order, Chettinad Limited filed action against the Inland Revenue Department, the Commissioner of Inland Revenue Department. Now, what is the dispute? Dispute is Chettinad Limited, Bank of Chettinad Limited says that they are a bank. They say we are a bank and we are carrying on banking business. So therefore, we are entitled for the tax concession. On the other hand, the Inland Revenue Department says Chettinad Limited is not a bank, so therefore they are not entitled for the concession. Now the matter is before judge. What is the question that judge has to decide? A simple question. Simple question is whether the Chettinad Limited is a bank or not. So then this case is purely based on the question of who is a bank or what is a bank. So then the court has to decide, or court has to interpret the word bank. Who can be considered as a bank? Now remember, this case heard in year 1947. By that time, there was no Banking Act. We had only Bills of Exchange Ordinance, and we referred cases previously decided by English courts. So then the judge also looked into the provisions of the Bills of Exchange Ordinance, and also the cases decided in England and Sri Lanka by that time Ceylon. All the cases, those cases also considered, and judge find out this. Now the business carried out by the Chettinad Limited looks like a banking business. But when you consider the other financial companies or financial institutions who lend money also doing the same business, then what is the difference between the finance company and a bank? Or otherwise, what will happen? Every finance company will claim that they are a bank and they are also entitled for the tax concession or other benefit where the banks enjoys. So therefore, then judge looked into the matter, and judge looked what is the unique, or what are the unique features of a banking business or banking practices, which is not common to the other financial institution. So then when judge looked into this matter, judge observed that financial companies and also the banks both are taking deposits from the customers. That is a common practice. So therefore, it is not unique to the banks. Then judge observed that both banks and the financial companies are granting financial assistance or lending money to the customers. So that, and also they charge interest. So both financial companies and also banks do this. So therefore, lending money is also not a unique feature of banking practice. So that also judge observed. Then both financial companies and also banks charge interest on lending. That is their income. So that is also a common feature, not a unique feature to the banks. So then judge further analyzed, when he further analyzing this situation, he observed there's a unique feature in the banking practices or banking business. That is, banks are maintain current accounts for their customers. The banks are maintaining current accounts for their customers. No financial institution or any other institution can carry out or maintain current account for their customers. So judge observed that as a unique feature of banking practice. So based on that, the judgment is given. Judge considered some more other things, but mainly he considered this as a unique feature of banking practice or banking business. So then the judgment was delivered like this. The Supreme Court decided that the bank means a company or a person carrying on the main business of accepting of deposit of money on current account. So if you have to be if you are claiming that you are a bank, then you should be able to, you are authorized to maintain current accounts for the customers. Otherwise, you are not a bank. You are only a financial institution or financial finance company. So that was the distinguish that the court observed in this case. Very important case, Commissioner of Inland Revenue versus Bank of Chettinad. So do you have any questions up to now? Okay, since you don't have questions, then I will go to the next slide. Right. Then we'll see. Now I said we have to consider the provisions of bills of exchange ordinance when we are deciding who is a banker. So the bank, as per the bills of exchange ordinance, as per the interpretation given in the bills of exchange ordinance, the bank has been interpreted as, according to the interpretation clause of bills of exchange ordinance, section 2, bank includes a body of persons, whether incorporated or not, who carries on the business of banking. This is the interpretation given. Banker includes a body of persons, whether incorporated or not, who carries on business of banking. When you see this interpretation, you can observe, as per the bills of exchange ordinance, it is not necessary to register as a company to carry out banking business during this period, as per the bills of exchange ordinance 1927. You see, it says a body of person, whether incorporated or not. That means whether you are incorporated as a company or whether you are not incorporated. That means if you are a proprietor, if you are a partnership, if you are a society, you can carry out banking business without incorporating a company. Right? So this interpretation, when you see the interpretation, it is very vague, very broad interpretation. Now, under this interpretation, you can categorize anybody who is carrying out banking business as a bank. And the other important thing here is, in this interpretation, though this interpretation say, the last part of the interpretation say, who carries on the business of banking. But this business of banking, what is business of banking, was not interpreted in the bills of exchange ordinance. So that is another weakness in this interpretation. So it is a weak interpretation. It's a very vague interpretation. Under this interpretation, we actually can't clearly identify who is a bank, as per the interpretation clause section 2 of the bills of exchange ordinance. You have any questions from this slide or previous slides? Everyone understood the interpretation given in the bills of exchange ordinance? So very important. You ultimately, at the end of the day, you will be able to compare the interpretation given in the bills of exchange ordinance with the interpretation given in the Banking Act. So you have to compare and analyze. So unless you clearly understood the interpretation of bills of exchange ordinance for the word banker and the interpretation given in the Banking Act for the banker, you will not be able to compare. Right. Okay. So then that is the interpretation given in the bills of exchange ordinance for the word bank or banker.
Please, sir, re-explain interpretation.
Right. So then we go to the next one. The bank, as per the Banking Act, the word bank has been interpreted in the Banking Act. Act number 30 of 1988. As I told you, now today we have a Banking Act passed by our Parliament in 1988. In this Act, there are definitions given for the words bank and banker, so on. What is the meaning of the banker as per the Banking Act? As per Section 2, subsection 1 of the Act, Banking Act, only incorporated companies are allowed to do banking business. Now that is Section 2, subsection 1 of the Banking Act says only incorporated companies are allowed to do banking business. So now, as per the provisions of Banking Act number 30 of 1988, only companies, registered companies can carry out banking business. So if you want to become, if you want to start a bank, the first thing that you have to do is that you have to register a company under the Companies Act. Unless you are a registered company, you are not allowed to do banking business. Now we will compare this point with the interpretation of Bills of Exchange Ordinance. What Bills of Exchange Ordinance says? It says a body of person, whether incorporated or not, can carry out banking business. If you go to Banking Act says only incorporated companies can allowed to do banking business. Now it is a completely different position, right? Under the Bills of Exchange Ordinance, even an individual partner or a partners or a firm or even a company could carry out banking business. Now it has changed. Now the position is, as per the Banking Act, only the registered company can do banking business. Number one. Number two, the other requirement under the Banking Act is the company, after registration that as a company, has to obtain a license to carry out banking business. So you need a license to carry out banking business. Then the further it says, other than the licensed commercial bank, so licensed specialized bank, no one can use the word bank, banker or banking in their name. That is the third one. So the license to carry out banking business is issued by the central bank, or more specifically says it is issued by the monetary board of the central bank. So that you have to remember. So if I summarize this, today, as per the Banking Act, to become a bank, you have to register the company under the registration, under the provisions of Companies Act. Then after that, have to obtain a license from the monetary board of central bank. Then only you can consider as a bank. Now today, if there is a case before courts, judge, it will be easy to decide who is a bank. So what you have to do is you have to prove that you have been registered as a company under the Companies Act. Then you have to produce the license obtained from the monetary board of central bank to carry out banking business. If you can provide those two certificates to the courts, then the court will look into the certificate and decide that yes, you are a bank, or if the certificate is not there, then you are not a bank. So you don't have to rely on the Bills of Exchange Ordinance or cases decided in England or anything, because the interpretation given in the Banking Act, it's very clear. So based on these two certificates, court can decide the matter. Okay, so do you have any questions from or up to now? Are you clear with the interpretation? Two interpretations: Bills of Exchange interpretation and Banking Act interpretation. Okay, then if it is so, then I'll go to the next one. Now, what is banking business? What is banking business? You see, now the interpretation given in the Banking Act for the banker, the last part says you have to obtain a license to carry out banking business. Here it says banking business. Then the questions comes to our mind: what is banking business? What is banking business? Now, even in this Bills of Exchange ordinance also is an interpretation says anybody, whether they are incorporated or not, they can carry out banking business. The banking business, the word banking business has been used in the Bills of Exchange ordinance and also in the Banking Act. The difference here is in the Bills of Exchange ordinance, though they have used the word banking business, there is no interpretation given in the Bills of Exchange ordinance for the word business of banking or banking business. But compared to this, when you come to the Banking Act, the word banking business has been interpreted in the Banking Act. Right. This is the interpretation given in the Banking Act for the word what is banking business. So as per the section 86 of the Banking Act, the banking business is, it has two parts. The banking business, it has two parts. I have given two parts here of the banking business. Then you will be easily remember this definition. First, you or the bank can receive funds. Two, the bank can use the funds. There are two parts in the banking business. One, they can receive funds. They can take money. Number two, they can use the money. Right? Now we'll go into the details. Right? The banks, as per the section 86 of the Banking Act, banking business is receiving funds from public. So banks can receive funds from the public through acceptance of money deposits. How do you get money? As deposits. From whom you get money? From the public. On what basis or what condition that you get the money? The condition is payable on demand. So this is how you get money. Right? The business, banking business, the first part, you can receive funds. How do you get? From whom do you get? From the public. How do you get? As deposits. On what condition you get? Payable on demand. Then the second part. Now you get money. The banks get money, deposits from the customers. And you promise to pay interest to the customers. Now the question is, if you get money and if you keep that money with you, how are you going to pay the interest to the customers? Right? If you just keep the money in the account of the customer, right? We say if it is a fixed deposit, we say example a fixed deposit for 3 months. So after 3 months, when the fixed deposit is matured, the bank has to pay the deposited amount plus interest to the customer. Now, from where do you pay? From where you can pay? The bank can pay the interest unless they generate some income. So therefore, the bank has to generate income. Then the question is, how do you generate income? That is given or dealt in the second part of the interpretation for the word banking business in the Banking Act. So it says the bank can use the funds of the deposits or funds for below reasons. One, for advances. So the bank can give or lend money. So whose money? Depositors' money, right? Customers' money. So they deposit money in the bank give money to the public as loans, advances, right? So as you know, when you give loan, when you give advances, the customer has to pay with the interest. The bank charge interest. So the interest component is the income of the bank. So that is your income. That is your business, right? Then that is number one. Number two, the bank can use the deposit money to invest. So in the banks, they have a treasury department. The bankers may know. So they advise the bank managers to deposit money, or they invest money in several money markets, and they generate income. So you can generate income by investing money, deposits in some other places. So that is number two. Number three, the banks can do any other operation either authorized by law or customary banking practices. Apart from that, apart from granting loans and advances, apart from investing, the banks are allowed to do any other business by using the funds of the customers, as long as that activity is legal, or if that practice is recognized under the customary banking practices. So that is the interpretation given in the Banking Act to the word banking business. Anyone has any questions? Okay, since seems to be no questions, so I assume that you understood the interpretations. Now 3 interpretations given: Bills of Exchange Ordinance interpretation, Banking Act interpretation for the bank, and third interpretation, interpretation in the Banking Act for the word business, rather banking business. Right. Then we'll go further. The Banking Act number 30 of 1988 gives a clear definition for the word bank, banker, and banking business. So compared to Bills of Exchange Ordinance, the Banking Act number 30 of 1988 gives a clear definition to the word bank, banker, and banking business. That's number one. Number two, as per the section 2, subsection 1 of the Banking Act, only incorporated, sorry, I'm repeating, sorry. Right. So now we know who is a banker, we know what is banking business. Then the next one we are going to deal with, we want to see who is a customer. Who is the customer? Right? One part we now cleared. The other part of the relationship, banker customer relationship, the other side, there is a customer. Right? There is a customer. Now we have to decide, or we have to recognize under the law who can be considered as a customer of a bank. Now again we go into the Bills of Exchange Ordinance number 24-27, section 82 and 83 of the Bills of Exchange Ordinance. It's mentioned the word customer in the Bills of Exchange Ordinance. They have mentioned the word customer. But actually, in the Bills of Exchange Ordinance, there is no clear definition given to the word customer. So, there's no statutory definition given in the Bills of Exchange Ordinance for the word customer. So, then today we have a Banking Act, 1988, Act number 30. So if there is no provisions in the Bills of Exchange Ordinance, we'll see whether there is a provisions in the Banking Act or whether the Banking Act has interpreted the word the customer. Unfortunately, I have given here in red, unfortunately, there is no statutory definition given in the Banking Act also for the word customer. Now, the Bills of Exchange Ordinance does not give a definition. There's no definition. Only they have used the word customer. In the Banking Act, they have used the word customer, but never, there's no interpretation for the word customer. So then, how we are going to decide a person is a customer, whether the person is a customer or not of a bank. So then we have to rely on other thing, that is the case law, right? You remember when it is, if it is a dispute regarding a banker customer relationship, we have to apply three things. One is Bills of Exchange Ordinance. Number two is Banking Act. Then the next one is decided cases. So since in this Bills of Exchange Ordinance, they have not provided any definition for the customer, and also there's no definition in the Banking Act for the word customer, then we have to rely on judicial decisions or case laws. So now next we are going to discuss or recognize as per the decided cases who can be considered as a customer of a bank. So next one is that. Up to now, you have any questions? Okay. Right. No questions. So therefore, I'll go to the next one then. Right. The next one. Now, as we said, that we have to decide who is a customer based on the decided cases. We'll see as decided by courts who can be considered as a customer based on the case laws. Number one, the Great Western Railway versus London and County Banking Company Limited. Important case. These cases that you have to remember. Without writing these cases, you can't interpret the word customer, right? So important cases. These are important cases. Number one is Great Western Railway versus London and County Banking Corporation Limited. This is commonly known as the Great Western Railway case. What happened? What is the decision of the court? Customer is a person who holds any type of account with the bank is considered as a customer. Customer means any person who is holding any type of account with a bank, whether it's a current account, savings account, fixed deposit, or whatever the nature of the account. If there is an account under that person's name, that person is a customer of the bank. Now you compare this decision with the Chettinad case judgment. In the Chettinad case judgment, court said to consider that person as a bank, the bank should maintain current accounts for their customers. But here, the English court says, if a person is maintaining any type of account, including current accounts, say even savings or fixed deposit or term deposit, whatever, then you are a customer of the bank. So, in other words, unless you have opened an account with a bank, you are not a customer. You cannot be considered as a customer. So the customer, you become a customer once you open an account. That is very important. Any type of account. It could be a current account, savings, fixed deposit, term deposit, maybe loan account or whatever, credit card account, right? Whatever, there has to be an account. If there is no account, then you are not a customer. Number one. Number two, immediately after opening the account, the account holder becomes a customer of the bank. That is number two. The question is, number two question is, when we say you have to open an account to become a customer, next question is, at what point we consider the banker-customer relationship starts? Say customer, a person who opens an account. But is it necessary to deposit money or do transaction to consider him as a account holder or rather customer? At what point that we can consider the person became the customer of the bank? So the answer is here in the Commission of Taxation versus Indian, Scottish and Australian Bank Limited. In this matter, it was decided, it was discussed. Immediately after opening the account holder becomes a customer of the bank. Whether the account is operated or not is immaterial. So that is very important. Even without a deposit, if you open an account without doing any transaction, if you maintain an account, still you are a customer of the bank. You are a customer. You can be considered as a customer. Then number three is very important part again. You have to listen very carefully. Now we know that to become a customer, that the person has to open an account with the bank. Point number three, Wood versus Martins Bank Limited. Wood versus Martins Bank Limited. In this matter, it was decided when a person used to deal with the bank, when used to do dealings with the bank without an account. Right? Now, listen very carefully. There is a person. That person is dealing with the bank without an account. He has not opened an account yet, but he is dealing with the bank. Dealing means for example, we say now he has applied for a loan. He doesn't have an account with the bank, but he has applied for a loan. So now the bank and the customer is negotiating, exchanging letters and so on, that they are now negotiating. The question is whether you can consider that person as a customer of the bank. But in generally in practice, that we call anybody as a customer of the bank, even he has not opened an account. But that reference in legal courts or actually legally that statement is not correct. So you can't consider or you can't say a person is a customer unless he opened the account. Then the third point is a person is dealing with the bank, he doesn't have an account. So simple, he is not a customer. He is not a customer. After that, what happened? He becomes a customer of the bank from the first date that he start dealing with the bank. If he open an account later, customer is dealing with the bank without an account. And later he opens an account. Then the question is, at what point he became the customer of the bank? So law says he becomes a customer of the bank not from the date that he opened the account, from the date he first dealt with the bank. So I will explain this with a note, then you will understand. We say there is a person called A. He is dealing with the bank but he has no account. He has no account with the bank. So we say now this person is dealing with the bank, we say from 2015. So he is dealing with the bank without an account. So he is not a customer. So still he is not a customer. Not a customer. Is not a customer. Now we say this A later in 2020, after 5 years, he opens an account in the bank. He opens an account in the bank. He opens an account. Open an account. 2020. Now what is the situation? Now he is a customer. A is a customer now. The question is when? From when? Answer is he is customer from 2015, not from 2020. He is a customer from 2015. This is the decision this is the position, legal position, as per the case decided in the judgment given in Wood versus Martin's case. So everyone understood this situation, or if someone wants to more clarification, I can do. So are you clear this position?
Yes, sir. We explained that.
Right, very good. Okay, good. That's good. Because it's very important, at the exam, sometimes they give a case study, a question based on a case study. So in a situation like that you must correctly identify at what point the customer, a person became the customer. Because it is very important, once the banker-customer relationship starts, there are a lot of legal implications, there are a lot of legal rights and duties applicable to the both parties. So therefore, it is very important to identify the correct point, the correct date, correct time the person became the customer of the bank. So that is.
Sir, isn't a credit card holder customer?
Of course, that is what I said. As per the case, first case that we discussed, Great Western Railway versus London and County Banking Company Limited, which says a customer is a person who holds any type of account with the bank. So as far as I know, and as far as the banking practices, you can't give a credit card to the customer without opening a credit card account. There's an account type called credit card account, which has a unique number for each and every card holder. So if you get a printout of that credit card account, it shows the outstanding of the card holder. So it is an account. So that is one. Are you clear with that?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Yeah, and there are other facilities or other types of products the bank provide. Sometimes basically the services we provide without a card or even without an account. So those services, if you have provided a service without an account, that person who got the service is not a customer, or rather there is no banker-customer relationship between the bank and the customer. There can be many type of agreements, contract between the bank and the other person, which is not considered as a banker-customer relationship. So remember that. And for example, now we'll take that in the banks that we have service providers. We say now janitorial service, cleaning people, right? We take an example. We say Abans, right? So Abans provide service to the bank. And bank and the Abans, they have a contractual relationship. They have signed a contract. But you can't say the Abans is a customer of the bank unless the Abans has opened an account with the bank. So without an account, holding an account in the bank, any person can do dealings with the bank. It is not necessary to open an account to do dealings. So that's why in Woods versus Martins matter, it says if a person has dealt with the bank without an account, he is not a customer. But if he opens an account later, he becomes a customer. The question is when. So answer is he becomes a customer of the bank from the date he dealt with the bank, not the date where he opened the account. So that is Wood versus Martins. Any questions up to now? Okay, so since there are no questions, then I'll go to the next one. Next one is next point is one bank can be a customer of another bank. This is another important point, right? One bank can be a customer of another bank. Now we are discussing about the relationship between a banker and a customer. So we are discussing about the banker-customer relationship. Then the question is, who can be a customer of a bank? Obviously, an individual who is over 18 years of age, who is mentally sound, that means who can enter into a contract, can become a customer of the bank by opening an account. Then individual, proprietor, partnership also can open an account in a bank. So they also can become a customer of the bank. And a company, incorporated company, can open an account in a bank. So they also can become a customer of a bank. Then what about another bank? Another bank. For example, we say HNB opens an account at Sampath Bank. So when we say HNB, HNB is a legal entity, legal person. So they are entitled to enter into contracts. So they can enter into a contract. So HNB goes and open an account at Sampath Bank. So now what is the relationship? It is again the banker-customer relationship. Who is the customer? Account holder. HNB is a customer of Sampath Bank. So then what you have to remember here is one bank can be a customer of another bank. The case is Lloyd Bank versus Chartered Banks of India and China. It says in one bank, if one bank A is collecting or clearing checks for the other banks, that is B, the banks A becomes a customer of a principal bank B. So that is number 4. Then number 5, the fifth point that you have to remember, even after the account is closed or ceased, the bank has the duty of secrecy. Bank has the duty of secrecy. Duty of secrecy, we are going to discuss next under the duties. For the time being, remember, even the account is closed, customer's account is closed, or even the account is seized, still the banker has the duty of secrecy. He can't divulge information. So that is as per the case decided, namely Tonia versus National Provincial Bank. Then number 6. 6th point is, even the account is overdrawn, the account holder continues to be a customer. Even the account is overdrawn, the account holder continues to be a customer of the bank. So overdrawn means the customer has not paid. He has overdrawn the account. Without sufficient funds, he has issued checks and the bank has paid by overdrawing the account is overdrawn. Or you may have granted the loan, the customer has not properly paid the loan and the loan is overdue. Still, he is a customer. Still, the account holder is a customer. So why it is important? If he is a customer, he has rights. He has rights. So bank cannot violate his rights. If it is a violation, if there is a violation, then it could be a breach of contract. So then the customer can sue the bank. So it is important, that point. So we discussed 6 points, important points under the under this. So you have any questions from here up to now?
Yes, sir. He explained this part.
Okay. No questions? Right. So then I'll go to the next one. Right. So now we discuss who is a bank. We discuss who is a customer. We discuss what is banking business. And now we are going to discuss, or we are going to identify what is the relationship between the banker and the customer. What type of relationship that the bank has with the customer. Right? We have several types of relationship. Right? Now, for example, if we take husband and wife, it's a legal relationship. What is the relationship? It's a marriage. It's a contract, marriage contract. So they have marriage relationship. If you take another example, employer and the employee. Employer and employee. It's a relationship again. It's a contractual relationship. That's an employment relationship. Likewise, when you take the bank and the customer, what is that relationship? What is that relationship? You can't call it a marriage relationship. You can't call it an employment relationship. So then what is it? The banker and the customer relationship is a contract. It's a contract. It's a contractual relationship. It's a contractual relationship. The banker-customer relationship creates number of legal rights and duties. If it is a contract, you may remember under the contract law we discussed, right? If you create a contract, legally enforceable contract, what will happen? Parties will get rights and duties. Parties get rights and duties. Rights and duties means that you have to perform, you have to provide that duty, you have to provide that duty to the other party. So rights means that you can exercise that right against the other party. One party's right is a duty to the other party. So it is a contractual relationship. The banker-customer relationship is a contractual relationship. So therefore, the both parties, that is banker one side, the customer other side, they have rights and duties under the banker-customer contractual relationship. Banker-customer relationship creates number of legal rights and duties. That is very important. Then the other important thing is most of these duties are implied legal rights and duties. Most of these rights and duties are implied rights and duties. Implied means vyanga, not written. Now when you open an account with a bank, so you get terms and conditions applicable to the accounts. The banks give terms and conditions. So that is written terms and conditions. However, your rights and duties are not limited to the rights and duties or conditions that mentioned in the written agreement. So there are other terms and conditions or other duties and rights applicable to the banker and customer as a result of banker-customer relationship, which is not written in the document. Those are implied duties and rights applies to the bank, applies to the customer under the banker-customer relationship. So the banker and the customer has duties and obligation on each other on the contractual relationship. So that is the nature of the relation, basic main relationship between the banker and the customer. So do you have any questions from this? Do you understand what is the relationship between a banker and a customer? Do you understand who is a bank? Do you understand who is a customer? Do you understand what is banking business? And do you understand what is the nature or what is the basic relationship between the banker and the customer? Those are the topics that we discuss under this. All clear? No questions? Okay. So then,
so can you give me an example for legal implied rights, like in between bank and customers?
okay. Okay. Right. Good question. Right. We'll say like this. Now, you want an example for implied legal right. We'll see what is a implied legal right to a customer on on a banker-customer relationship. We say a customer open a current account in a bank, right? A customer open a current account in a bank. When a customer open a current account, the banks give terms and conditions applicable to the current accounts. So those terms and conditions are prepared by the bank, and customer sign and open the account. But if you go through, I have seen a lot of terms and conditions in different banks. But if you go through the terms and conditions given by the bank to the customers, it's very, in most of the cases, the terms and condition doesn't say the customer has a right to issue checks. Doesn't say so. It is not mentioned in the terms and conditions, right? However, if a bank allowed a customer to open a current account, customer get an implied legal right to issue checks, and the bank has an obligation or duty, implied duty, to honor the checks issued by the customer. That is not mentioned in the terms and condition, in written terms and condition, but by application of law, banking practices, under the banker-customer relationship, contractual relationship, if it is a current account, customer has a right to issue checks. The bank has a duty to honor the checks subject to certain conditions, which we are going to later discuss. So that is an implied right and duty, not mentioned in anywhere. Are you clear?
Yes, sir.
Right. Thank you. Any other questions up to now? Okay. Seems to be no questions. So then I'll go to the next topic. Right. So now we know between the banker and the customer, there is a contractual relationship. I said under the contractual relationship, the banker and the customer gets rights and duties. Rights and duties. Right? Once an account is opened in a bank, when the account is opened by your customer, so he creates a contract. Under this contract, we have one side the bank, the other side the customer. We have a customer, right? So this is a contract. Now, since this is a contractual relationship, the bank has rights and duties. In the other side, the customer also gets rights and he has duties. So duties, the customer's duties towards the bank. So the bank has a right, customer has a duty. One side. In the other side, bank has duties and customer has rights. So this is the nature of the banker-customer relationship. One party is rights, other party is duty. Rights mean that you have a right to exercise that particular thing against the other party. So when the bank has a right, that they can exercise the right against the customer. For example, right to set off. We are going to discuss later. Right to set off. Bank has a right to set off. So that right the bank can exercise against the customer. Right? So that one. Because it's a duty of the customer. Then the other side, duty to pay the money is the duty of the customer. If he doesn't pay, bank has a right to set off. On the other side, right? Example, customer has a right to claim wrongfully debited money from his account. So, customer has a right to claim the money from the bank. If bank has wrongfully debited the customer's account, customer can claim the money, bank has to return the money, has a duty to return that money to the customer. So, one party is right is a duty of the other party, one party is right is a duty of the other party. So that this is the way it works, right? So we'll see that under this contractual relationship. Now we'll take one by one. We'll take one side first. We take the bank side and see what are the rights and duties of the bank. So that is the topic that we are going to discuss now. Right. We'll go one by one. First one, bank's rights. What are the rights that bank can exercise against the customer? The right to charge interest and fees. Number one, right to charge interest and fees. It is a right to charge interest and fees. What does it mean? Now, bank's business is lending money to the customers. They are lending money to the customers. Now, when banks lend money, banks charge interest on the loans and overdraft, even a credit card. Bank charge interest. Can the bank charge interest legally? The answer is yes. Under the banker-customer relationship, the bank has a right to charge interest for the advances. So that is number one. Then bank can charge fees also. Fees. For the services provided by the bank to the customer, the bank has a right to charge fees. Even though the customer has not written in writing, or verbally, the bank has right to charge interest for the lending, and they can charge fees for the services provided to the customer. Customer is bound to pay. Customer has a duty to pay interest to the bank for the lending, for the loans that he obtained, and for the services he has to pay as a fees. That is number one. Number two, the bank has a right to combine accounts. In Sinhala, we call it Eka Baddha Kiri. Ginum Eka Baddha Kiri. Right to combine accounts. I will explain that to you. This right the bank exercise under the banker-customer relationship. It is not mentioned in anywhere. It's not written in anywhere. Even though the bank can exercise this right against the customer. Now we'll see what it is. We say a customer A is maintaining two accounts in the same bank. Account number 1, account number 2. Same customer, one customer is maintaining two accounts in the same bank. In the same bank. We say in this account he has 1,000 rupees. And this account he has, we say 2,000 rupees. The balance, account balance. We say both are current accounts. And this customer issue a check, we say to the B, for 2,000 rupees. Issue a check for 2,000 rupees. Now, we say he issued the check from this account to B for 2,000 rupees. A check. Now this check we will present for the payment. So 2,000 rupees check came for the payment. Now there is no sufficient funds in this account to pay the check. So what are the options available to the bank? So bank can reject the payment or return the check because insufficient funds. That is number 1. But there is another option. The bank can exercise the right to combine accounts. So bank can combine these two accounts without the consent of the customer, without informing the customer. As a right, the bank can combine the accounts. Once it is combined, the balance will be then 3,000. 3,000. So the bank can pay the check. Then the balance will be 1,000. So this is called combination of account or combine of account. Right to combine accounts. Clear? Everyone, you are clear with combine of account? Because I asked this question, the combine of account and set off are not the same. And don't get confused with that also, because next we are going to discuss right to set off. You have to be very, very clear on combining of accounts. One customer maintain more than one account. We say two accounts in the same bank. In the same bank. In a situation like that, the bank has a right to combine accounts of the same customer. Accounts of the same customer. That is a right. Without informing or without the consent of the customer. That is number 2. Right to combine. Then right to set off. Next one is right to set off. What do you mean by right to set off? Right? I will explain that also. Right to set off. Right to set off mean in Sinhala we call Hilau Kirima. Hilau Kirim. Right to set off. We'll see what it is. Again, we say this customer, he has two accounts, right? Two accounts. We say this is a current account and this is a savings account. Savings account and a current account. In this current account, we say his account is overdrawn. There's a minus balance, overdrawn balance 2000. In his savings account, we say he has 3000 rupees. Right? Now the customer is obliged to pay this money to the bank. Customer is bound to pay. That is his duty. Because it's overdrawn. Bank has paid his checks by overdrawing the account. So this amount 2000 is due to the bank. But the customer has not settled the bank. Customer has not settled the bank. So in a situation like that, the bank has a right to set off this 3000 rupees against the due amount. So that means the bank can recover 2000 from his savings account and settle whatever amount due from the bank. So then this will reduce to 1000 rupees. So this is called right to set off. For this is a right. It's a right of the bank. Bank does not want to get the consent of the customer, does not want to inform the customer. By practice, by general banking law, the bank has right to set off. It's a right, implied right of set off. So that is called right to set off. So everyone clear about this? Any questions up to now before I go to the next one? Right to set off and combination of account. Are you clear with that?
Yes,
right.
sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
So then no questions about that. Then I'll go to the next one. Next one is lien rights. Lien rights. Again, it's an implied right given to the banks under the banker-customer relationship. Lien rights means it's like this: right to hold the properties of the customer until he settles all the dues to the bank. Again, listen very carefully. Lien rights. Lien rights means in Sinhala meaning of this is Randawa taba ganime aithiya. Lien. Under lien. Under lien means it is subject to hold. What do you mean by this? Lien. The bank has a lien or right to hold the properties of the customer until he settles all the dues to the bank, which is called lien rights. I will explain to you here in the whiteboard, then you will understand what it is. Okay, we say there is a customer. We say A. This customer obtained a loan from the bank. Loan, we say loan number 1. We say 10 million loan, and he gave a mortgage, or we say it's a fixed deposit, FD, fixed deposit, or even a mortgage, right? Mortgage of loan, right? So he got this loan, he in, we say 2015. 2015 for 5 years. So again, this customer obtained another loan. We say loan number 2. We say it's again, we say it's a 5 million loan. No security, without any security. We say he obtained this in 2016. Now we have 2 loans. One customer, he has 2 loans with the bank. One is he obtained 2015, 10 million with a security, FD and a mortgage bond. And there is another loan, 5 million, 2016 he obtained without any security, no security, clean facility. We say this customer in 2020 he settled the first loan, paid 10 million loan paid. Now what is the situation? Once the loan is settled, paid in full, the bank has to release the security. Now we say the customer has defaulted the other loan. This he has paid. The second loan, $5 million loan, defaulted. So what is the right of the bank? The bank can hold the FD and also mortgage without releasing to the customer until he settled this loan. Customer can't say that I have paid my loan 10 million, right? Fixed deposit is given only for this, and this is not secured by the fixed deposit. Therefore, this is my property. So bank has a right, implied right, to hold that property until the customer settle total dues to the bank. That is called lien rights. So are you clear with the lien rights? Everyone, or do you want a more clarification? Seems to be no questions on that. So therefore, then I will go into the next one. Duties of the bank. These are the rights of the bank. Then we have to go. We have to study duties of the bank. I am asking again before we go into the duties of the bank. Are you clear with the rights of the bank? All the rights. Right to charge interest. Of course, that is not a complicated thing. You know that the bank charge interest and fees, and the combination of account. Then the next one, right to set off, and lien rights. Are you clear with that?
Can you please explain the set off, please?
Set off. Okay, right. I will explain it again. Right, again, one customer maintains 2 accounts. We say current account and a savings account. Right, current account and a savings account. In the current account, he has overdraw one balance, minus balance, 2000 rupees due to the bank from the customer. In the savings account, he has money, 3000 rupees in the account. Sorry, 3000 rupees. Now, this is due to the bank from the customer. Customer has a duty to pay this 2000 rupees to the bank. But he has failed. He is not paying. This money is in his account, savings account. That is his money, not bank's money. Right? Now, bank has requested to pay this money, but still the customer has not paid. In a situation like this, the bank has right to set off. So bank has a right to set off. Bank can set off 2000 rupees from this account. Transfer 2000 rupees to this account. So once 2000 rupees transferred to this, bank can recover the money and the balance will be zero. The bank can recover the money. This will then reduce to 1000 rupees. Right? This right, the bank exercise this right without the consent or without informing the customer. That because it is a right, it is an implied right that bank has against the customer under the bank-customer relationship. Are you clear?
Excuse me,
Yes.
sir. Can we clear the credit card defaulters like that?
I could hear you. Can you repeat the question?
Can this procedure can be used to clear the credit card defaulters?
Credit card.
Yeah.
Yeah. Any facility. Any facility. Right. The right to set off, the bank can use to recover any amount, any facility. But it's a good question that you ask. Then, but even though this is there, bank, you may have not seen exercise this right, right? You may have not seen exercising this right to set off by banks unless there is a letter of set off, right? Remember, though I say it is a right to set off, this right to set off and combination of accounts and even lien rights are subject to many restrictions, subject to many principles, law principles. Unless all those conditions are fulfilled, you can't exercise this right. That is very dangerous, right? If you exercise your rights without completing the condition, then it will be a breach of contract. That is why the banks are not exercising this right, even though it is there. So what the banks do, they normally, when they are granting a loan, they get a letter of set off, which says in case of default, the bank has a right to set off any account of the customer and recover the loan. So, for example, since you asked that question, whether we can exercise right to set off against the credit card, to recover credit card. It's a good question. It is not only the credit card, we can, as per the law, principle of law, the bank can exercise right to set off to recover anything, any due. It could be a lease rental, it could be a loan rental, or even it could be a credit card, whatever, overdraw, OD account, whatever, you can do it, but subject to limitations. Those limitations that you have not studied. So therefore, don't try to exercise this right, otherwise it will be a problem. Because for example, I said that we'll take the combination of account or even right to set off I said one customer maintain an account in a bank. There is a condition to say in the same capacity, without specific instructions. If the money is deposited in the account with a specific instruction for a specific purpose, then the right to set off is limited. So those are the things that you have to consider. You have to consider before we exercise the right to combine and right to set off. So, for example, when we say in the same capacity, a customer can maintain two different accounts in the same bank in different capacities under the same name. Now, for example, we get a lawyer, right? We say Mr. Pereira is a lawyer. Mr. Pereira is maintaining an account in the bank, same branch. We say two savings account or one current account and a savings account under the same name, Mr. Pereira's name. Right? It looks like one person is maintaining two different accounts. But actually, the Mr. Pereira can maintain these two accounts for different purposes in different capacities. One is his personal money. We say it's savings account. Or in the other account, he maintains for professional purpose. In that account, he keeps his client's money. So what will happen if we combine these two? We say Mr. Pereira's current account is overdrawn. That is his personal current account. And there is a savings account Mr. Pereira is maintaining at the same bank, but that is for his professional services or professional account where he keep his client's money. That money is not his money. So Mr. Pereira has not paid the OD. The bank combined these two accounts and set off the money against the credit card or say current account. So whose money that you have taken? It is not Mr. Pereira's money. It's Mr. Pereira's client's money. So that's why I said, even though these rights are there in books, in law, we as bankers very rarely exercise these rights because those are subject to many restrictions. Unless all the terms, all the conditions are fulfilled, the bank can't exercise these rights. Right to combine, right to set off, or right to lien is not that simple. Are you clear? Are you okay with the answer? The gentleman who asked the question?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Yes. Okay. Any other questions from this up to now? Okay. So then at this point we stop today. Next week we are going to start from there. We are going to start the duties of the bank. So next week, Saturday, we'll meet at 1 o'clock. Please remind me where we stopped and we start from there. So notes are given. You may read notes. If you have extra readings, that is better. Thank you very much. We'll meet on the next day.